Welcome back. Now, in a major cost-cutting move now, President Bola Tinubu has approved a directive to slash the size of official delegations for foreign and domestic trips by up to 60%. Presidential spokesperson Ajorin Galale disclosed this to State House correspondents at the presidential villa in Abuja. According to him, the new limits will affect travel by the president, vice president, first lady, and other top officials of the government. Here's Ngelale now with the breakdown.
The official trips that will be undertaken within the country, that is when Mr. President or the Vice President travels to any state within the country, the massive bills that accrued due to allowances and ESTA code for security detail coming from Abuja, going and traveling into those states, will be massively cut due to the directive of the President that the security outfits within states, whether it be police, DSS, or branches of the military, will frontline his protective detail when he travels to those states, a major cost-cutting initiative. That will affect the office of the Vice President as well as the office of the First Lady. Additionally, when any international travel is being approved, the following limits have been placed on all ministers of the Federation. 4 members of their staff, appointees and the like, will be allowed to travel with a minister on an official trip. For heads of agency, that will be limited to 2 members of staff allowed to travel on an official trip. Furthermore, the numbers that the President has now approved for official travel with him that will apply to his principal staff are as follows. On international trips, the President has directed that no more than 20 individuals be allowed to travel with him. That number will be cut down to 5 in the case of the First Lady. 20 for the President, 5 for the First Lady. Additionally, the number in the entourage on official international trips for the Vice President will be cut to 5. In terms of local trips, the President has approved a new limit of 25 members of staff to accompany him on domestic trips within the country. The office of the First Lady is now limited to 10 staff members to accompany her on official trips within the country. The Vice President will be limited to 15 members of staff on official trips within the country, while his wife will be limited to 10 members of staff on official trips within the country, the same as the First Lady.
Now, this is coming a month after the controversy that trails the federal government's reported spending of at least 2.4 billion naira to sponsor delegates that attended the United Nations Annual Climate Summit, COP28 in Dubai. Nigeria's delegation at the conference was estimated at 1,411, though the government disputed the figure, saying the delegation was just over 400. Let's discuss this new development with the chairman, Human and Environmental Development Agenda Header Resource Center now, Lanre Suraj. Mr. Suraj, thank you very much for coming on the program. And this must be something positive for you.
Well, this should be something tending towards positive. This is not yet actually the result of the achievement that we want to celebrate. We would want to recognize and celebrate the practice of that. If you understand Nigeria's context very well, the problem is not about policy decisions and also programs, even law of government. The problem has always been the practice and implementation of that. So this would always be the need to see how we have mechanisms to monitor what is just been said by the president. So otherwise, if the First Lady breaches this call order from the president, it's a function of who is going to query the First Lady, who has the capacity to report the First Lady to the president, on non-compliance with this result. If the delegation is already put to 20 for the president to go abroad, and suddenly the son of the president decided is going to be on that entourage and also possibly come with his own aides who would be capable to also report the son to the president. So with this instruction, the next thing that we want to hear or see from the government is the mechanism that is going to be different from what currently exists and has the capacity to monitor and also ensure the enforcement of this. Otherwise, many of the corruption that associates with this kind of government policies and practices is not usually the political head or that. It is usually the people who are around government, civil servants many times, who are responsible for implementing these policies that are already benefiting from the wrath and the madness that actually is associated with foreign and local travel. So how we want to make sure that this people in office are made to comply with the decision or policy of the government is what really should be our next step. So we can't afford to go to sleep or even start celebrating this pronouncement without us seeing, unfortunately, the budget has been passed and the old arrangement was part of the budget approval of the National Assembly. So how do we get to see
but
that
then
the
I mean
also is
even though sorry to interject, even though the budget has been passed, that is not to say nothing can be done. Shouldn't that be the responsibility of the budget office, for instance, to ensure that the budget reflects the directive of the president?
No, that's exactly the point that I was making. So with the budget that is passed already for the old order, so the next thing is to see how we follow up with the budget office. Don't assume that the budget office will do that. If care is not taken, that is actually free money for the civil servants in office who would assume and also anticipate that Nigerians will forget and the government will forget. So what you will then have is, even eventually, if you have the cost in this delegation and also the cost reduced, it will still be mismanaged, just like what you have seen with the humanitarian ministry. It's going to be a function of just free money to also be
So essentially, what you are saying, is that, look, people need to monitor the usage of this money, because obviously you're going to have savings. There will be cuts in the budgets for travels and all of that. So what exactly what exactly this money that will be saving now, what the money will be used for? People need to watch out for that. That's what you're saying.
Precisely. Yeah, that is exactly what I'm saying. It is very crucial for us. That is only when we can make some gains out of this. Otherwise, it's just going to just be a complete fluke that the government will make a pronouncement, the court will still be done. So there are two critical issues. There must be implementation to ensure that the affected public office holders, the president, the vice president, their wives, the head of agencies, the ministers, although I still can't understand why some of them, like the ministers, will need 4 members to travel with him at the delegation. But even if we are able to cut to 4, how we make sure that this is actually effectively implemented by the officers concerned. That is the first one. The second one is now when we have the cost from them, how we want to ensure that those costs still don't get misapplied or go to private pockets when nobody's monitoring that.
Now, just as you said, implementation is very critical. But in your opinion now, how can effective implementation be carried out? Who should be responsible for it?
Yeah, I mean, the first person to be responsible for that would be the president himself. So if the president has given this kind of instruction, he must follow that up with a monitoring mechanism. It can be assumed that it will take automatic effect in the hands of those who have actually been benefiting from the earlier system. It is not just people benefiting from traveling, it is also people benefiting from hiding under the cost of those traveling and those large entourage. That is number one. Number two, the second level of monitoring is supposed to be the National Assembly, which is now also query not only just the budget that has been approved, but when there would be maybe additional or supplementary budget that will be submitted to the National Assembly, or when accounts will be rendered during the midterm framework evaluation framework that would be conducted on the budget. And then the third level of monitoring is supposed to be now for the media. We should also watch keenly. I must confess, unfortunately, although it was good for us, what happened with the Conference of State Parties meeting at the climate change. Was really a major challenge. And what we lost from that is the fact that even though we have a record of a huge delegation that was under government delegation, I must confess that truly it wasn't just government delegation. But most of those, the majority on that list that we saw were not sponsored by government. Majority of them were actually sponsored by civil servants who were collecting money from people and granting them visa to travel. So they were running some visa racketeering, and you would see individuals, private persons, including even civil society, NGO persons, wearing badges of government officials. So they were really not like government. So we really need to also understand this issue so that we can correct the anomalies that goes there. So the government official and the huge delegation for government is one issue on the side, including even the 400 that the government considered. But the huge population are those civil servants who were running racket of
Okay,
visa and using government notes
I see.
and platform to actually sponsor or even support people to travel abroad.
Now, I'm glad you talked about the National Assembly, ensuring that this is implemented. But even the National Assembly, too, is guilty of this, huge travel budget. Sometimes the Senate president is traveling. You see the huge number of senators that go with him. Same thing with the Speaker of the House of Representatives. How do we get... how do we get this applied to even the National Assembly and across states? Because even state governors are guilty of it as well.
Yeah. No, I mean, this is very crucial and it is important. So the truth is, the truth must be told. The president has a duty also to effect what we're seeing at his executive level, also to go to the legislature. It's the head of the government. So there's
Well, he
the
can only persuade them, isn't it?
the
Because, I
level
mean,
of
he can't
sorry?
force it down on them.
No, it can't actually force it down in terms of cutting the cost of governance. I mean, I always want to assume that the National Assembly is almost like an island unto itself. If there's no money and the country is suffering from this financial hard situation, the executive can always get into this session. So if the president is going with less than 20 member delegation to anywhere, what would be the justification for the Senate president or the speaker to have the same equal number or even more, to travel with them? So, I mean, the president can actually make this a point of duty. And if that is failing, the president can make it a public issue for Nigerians to engage the National Assembly or not. So if the president is not willing to lead by example alone and forgo the other thing, then we're in trouble. But the president must actually act as the head of government. And that is why when you have some of the corrupt practices in the National Assembly, the president is also still held accountable and responsible. So it is the president on behalf of Nigeria elected to govern on behalf of Nigeria. So where you have all of that, I mean, a senator is elected in one senatorial district. The speaker is elected in one House of Representatives, constituency. That is not the same authority and power or wide acceptability as the president of the country. So the president has that duty on behalf of Nigerians to make sure that our resources are judiciously utilized by all other politically exposed persons or elected or elected authorities. So the National Assembly is not an island on itself. So that is why also the final budget is subject to the president's signature. Otherwise, the approved budget by the National Assembly for the National Assembly should have automatically go into force without the presidential assent.
And the state governors?
The same thing with the state governors are actually worse than the president. Unfortunately, it's because it's not been focused on that. You can actually blame, in fact, many of the speakers in the state assembly don't even have the power to have delegations going with them except with the approval of the governors. But the state governors are almost worse than what we see with president and the National Assembly. So the governor, just like he's capable of giving subsidy to the states, assisting them with the fund, and they get also this fund from the national force. That is where there's the sharing formula. The EFCC is, and the court has ruled to that effect, that the EFCC and ICP can investigate those states and the resources and finances of the case. The states, the president has that capacity and power to bring them under what we call cost of governance in their state. It is not just sufficient to say you get the approval from the House of Assembly. If it's going outside reasonable justification for expenditure, especially recurrent expenditure, I think because they get some free money from the federal government anyway, so the federal government can query what this is going to be used for, and at the same time make it an advisory process. And if that is not addressed, then something better can be done.
Olanraja Suraj, Human Environmental Development Agenda Chair, thank you very much for coming on the program, and thank you for your time with us.
Always my pleasure.
Thank you so very much.
Thank you for having me.
All right, that's how much we can take on the program. We thank you very much for watching. I'll see you again next week. Bye-bye.